Whoops, I blundered again. I bought 2 things, but I only needed 1 thing. Womp womp. Which of these 2 things should I return? Should I return the Stream Deck Atomic Purple by Elgato, a limited edition collector's item I bought new from Amazon for $125 on Prime Day, but then they sent it and it was already open and the price went up and they refused to exchange it? Or should I return the Razer Stream Controller X, an item I bought from clearance from Best Buy for $90? It's an all-in-one keypad for streaming and content creation powered by a bunch of Pac-Mans that I'm told is pronounced Laupidek. Wow, that's too close to call, so we're gonna have to open up these boxes to figure out which one's a keeper and which one's a sleeper. As always, the first things first, let's check out the environmental messaging on the bottom of the box. The Elgato Stream Deck has packaging that's plastic-free. That's 1 point for the Elgato Stream Deck. But watch out, Elgato, the Razer Stream Controller X is printed with soy ink. That's 1 point for the Razer Stream Controller X. Oh, but what's this? The Elgato Stream Deck is a product made of 60% repurposed plastic. That's a 2nd point for the Elgato Stream Deck. Oh, but don't worry, fans of the Razer, because the Razer Stream Controller X has hashtag #GoGreenWithRazer. That's a 2nd point for the Razer Stream Controller X. Now, let's check out the back of the box. The Stream Deck has 15 fully customizable LCD keys, but the Stream Controller X has 15 switchblade buttons. But the Stream Deck has no more alt-tabbing, focus on your audience. But the Stream Controller X has multi-link macros to automate your process. But the Stream Deck has tap to control your favorite apps and platforms. But the Stream Controller X has compatible with leading streaming software for plug-and-play convenience. But the Stream Deck has instantly adjust audio, switch scenes, launch media, and much more. But the Razer Controller X has designed for efficient multitasking with intuitive navigation and organization. But the Stream Deck has configure hotkeys for quick system control. But the Stream Controller X has swappable magnetic faceplate, asterisk, to customize your controller. But the Stream Deck has turn keys into folders to access unlimited actions. But the Stream Controller X has detachable 50-degree anti-slip magnetic stand to support the optimal viewing angle. But the Stream Deck has personalizer keys with custom icons or choose from hundreds. But the Stream Controller X has 1-year warranty. Oh no, both of these are still tied even after reading the back of the box. I still don't know which one of these I'm going to return. Maybe the side of the box will help me solve this conundrum. It doesn't. Oh well, apparently the only choice I have is to take both these products out of the box and to set them side by side and take a picture. Something that apparently nobody has ever done before, even though they're 2 nearly identical products. First up, Stream Deck. It's very easy to open because it had already been opened. Thanks, Amazon. Comes with a limited edition Atomic Purple card. What's interesting is that you can't read what limited number it is without removing this thing and bending this tab. And this tab is already bent. That's interesting. There's the Stream Deck. It doesn't face straight up. We also have a safety guide in many languages. We also have a quick start guide in many languages. We also have a light purple pastel Easter-colored USB-C cable, which does not match the Stream Deck at all. And that's it. Would there have been more stuff in the box if it had come sealed? I don't know, but this is what I have. Next up, we have the Razer Stream Deck. Next up, we have the Razer Stream Controller X, formerly the Razer Stream Controller Twitter, which has a worse name. It looks like this point goes to the Stream Deck. The only thing that could take that point away is if another, much larger gaming company were to release a completely unrelated product called Steam Deck. Please notice how the Stream Deck is much smaller than this giant, unwieldy Steam Deck. That's the main difference. Okay, Razer. Got it. There you have it, the Razer Stream Controller X. Also in the box, we have a USB cable that is textured like a vacuum cord for some reason. We have some kind of difficult to read black on black instructions, or a startup guide, and some safety guidelines, and a sticker. And we have the stand, which is also wrapped in plastic. But don't worry, soy ink. I think that's it. Okay, my initial impressions are, I think the buttons are slightly bigger on the Razer. Does this come out? It's supposed to come out. Yes, okay, that comes out. There you go, side by side, finally at last. 2 very, very similar products. The Stream Deck seems to be slightly heavier, and the Razer seems to be slightly thicker, but they're both going to be in stands, so I don't think it's going to matter that much. Face-to-face, the Stream Deck is a little bit bigger. The bezel around the buttons on the Stream Deck is a bit bigger. Looks like the buttons on the Razer are about 0.1 millimeter bigger than on the Stream Deck, which is completely insignificant. The buttons on the Razer are completely flat, which is probably why they're not picking up the light as much, and the buttons on the Stream Deck feel like they have a little bit of a curve to them. And when the idea is that you look through the keycap to see the screen behind it, all that extra glare on the Stream Deck, probably not a good thing. Also, the Razer has a faceplate that removes with magnets. The faceplate on the Stream Deck is also removable. Somehow. There you go. Easy peasy. Considering you're paying extra for the color of this thing, you probably don't want to take off the faceplate, but you can. Kind of. Let's put them side by side in their stand. See how that holds up. Looks like the Razer's held in with magnets, and the Stream Deck is held in with just being put in there. There it goes. Overall, I'd say that the Razer stand definitely feels more substantial. And the transparent coloring of this plastic certainly doesn't help make it look like a premium product. But on the other hand, the cheap plastic is why I bought it. Let's see how sticky these sticky pads are. So that is a relatively grippy piece of rubber. On this ESD mat, that rubber is gripping pretty well. I have to poke it reasonably hard to move it. Whether or not that would hold up for a desk, I'm not so sure. And on this Razer, the bottom of the Razer I've heard described as nanotape, so I thought it would be sticky like the nanotape I have, and it's not really. It's pretty grippy. It feels different than rubber, but not that different. So let's see how it holds up to me poking this thing. It actually holds up really well. It's actually really interesting. So I can tilt this thing back, no problem, and lift it up. It's not stuck to the desk, but when I poke it parallel, it really, really resists me trying to move it. Like, I'm really, really pushing on this thing, and it doesn't want to move. Like, if I tap it in a way that wiggles it off the desk, it'll move back. But if I tap it in a way that keeps it laying on the desk, it's like I'm pushing on this with like 10 pounds of force, and this thing's not moving. That's different than I expected. It seems to be a really effective base. If I push on the Stream Deck with about half that amount of force, there it goes. And it resists being pushed back, but not like this one. Kind of a different animal. That's interesting.
Now, here's what you've all been waiting for. Finally, at last. That's right, folks. The two devices sitting side by side, all in one frame, brought directly to your door through the power of the internet. You'd think everybody talking about this Razer product would show this, but you'd be wrong. That's why Sparkio's here to do the thinking for you. The angle of the faceplates is exactly the same. The Stream Deck has a thicker bezel, but it sits lower to the table than the Razer, so if you need your buttons to be slightly higher, the Razer has you covered.
Okay, I'm probably not going to be able to get on camera that well, but the Razer is already covered in dust, and as I'm trying to dust it off, it's kind of scratched up already. It's kind of concerning that the Razer is already so scratched up because it's been out of the box for 5 minutes, and this is a keyboard you're supposed to be touching. I don't even know what you can do about that. It's not like you're going to put little screen protectors on each and every one of these little keys. That's just not going to happen. When a microfiber cloth is adding more scratches to the screen than the dust it picks up, I think that's kind of an issue. So whatever the Stream Deck is made out of, the buttons are holding up to scratching a lot better. It's harder, and that's kind of important to me, actually. The last hardware difference I'm interested in between the Elgato Stream Deck and the Razer Stream Controller X is which one has the brighter and easier to read screens. So I plugged both of these in, installed the apps, and turned the brightness to maximum. What was interesting is that when I installed the Razer one into my computer, it started trying to install the Synapse software right away, and the Razer Synapse software, 1, is bad software, and 2, is not the correct software. This uses the Loop Deck software. You have to go get that separately. And when I plugged the Stream Deck into my computer, it did nothing. Turns out this QR code on this limited edition card is a link to the Elgato software, but my QR reader is on my phone, and I can't install the software to my phone. So I just went to elgato.com instead and kept looking until I found it. I also wanted to test the most basic feature I could think of between the two, which is I want a mute button that will tell me whether or not the microphone is muted, and when I press it, it toggles that mute. So the pre-install buttons for Elgato, and I think it's pre-installed from the PC software. I don't think it's saved in the Stream Deck. You have some basic folder options, some basic volume controls, and they're not that interactive. And it gives you 2 pages, and one page says add more actions using pages, profiles, and folders, and you just do all of that in the app. So the Stream Deck app built in has a button you can drag and drop into place called volume input control, where you set it to control the microphone toggle. You press the button, it mutes the microphone on the laptop, and when you press it again, it unmutes and it tells you the state of that microphone. So to get that basic feature working in a basic way was fairly straightforward and easy once I figured out what the button was called. But then I ran into some trouble because the special edition version of the Stream Deck has special edition little button icons that you can go download and put on here. When you download the icon pack, it doesn't change anything. It's just kind of a set of pictures you can individually set to stuff. And when you set that icon, this icon, to this button, and you press that button, the icon doesn't change and there's nothing you can do about it. There's a type of button in the Stream Deck app where you get to set the on state and the off state, and when you press that button, it toggles between the two. And you get to decide what picture is set for the on state and what picture is set for the off state. You can't do that to this button. If you set this button to anything but the default picture, it stops working. So I started looking for a way to control that. You end up on Reddit pages where people are talking about how to write plugins for this thing, which you can do. You can make your own plugin and you can make this thing do a bunch of advanced things if you feel like programming it in a very advanced way. It's a huge hassle. What these people didn't do is explain that there are plugins on the Elgato Marketplace that you can download and install and will do the thing for you. So I eventually found the plugin on the Elgato Marketplace, I installed it, and that gives me a button that I have way more control over. I get to pick the on state, I get to pick the off state. You can control whether or not there is a sound, and you can control what input this toggles, and you can make as many of those buttons as you want. It does everything I could possibly want it to do. It was just annoying to figure out that I needed to go find a third-party plugin to go do a basic feature that should be built in, and kind of is built in, only to the fullest extent that it should be able to do. So I got all that figured out. It took about an hour and a half to figure out. Once I had it figured out, setting this up on a different computer doesn't take that long. It's not a big deal. The Razer, on the other hand, handles all this differently. For one, it has more stuff set up by default. It has several pages of things set up, even like a little soundboard. So to mute the microphone on the Razer, what you do is you hit this microphone button, it will list all the microphones in your system, and you press that button and it will mute it or unmute it. You have complete control over whatever you want. It's all there by default, and it will all list here on the screen. And one interesting thing is the Stream Deck is reading from the system the real state of these things, because all of these things agree whether or not this microphone is muted or unmuted. So this is all easy and straightforward and set up by default. That's great. But we're gonna run into trouble with this Razer is if you want this to act in any other way than exactly what I just said. If you want to control which microphones appear on the screen, you can't. If you want to change these icons, you can't. If you want to make this red when it's muted, so it's a lot easier to see, you can't. You want to change the font, you can't. I can find no way to control the contents of this screen whatsoever. It's just going to do what it wants. So I figure, okay, I can't control this little sub menu, that's fine. I'm just gonna go set up a microphone mute button on the main screen because I want to control it from there anyways. I don't want to be going in and navigating through a menu to figure out whether or not my microphone is muted. So there's one important thing you need to know if you want to set up a microphone mute button here on the Razer Stream Controller X, just like we have over here on the Stream Deck. And that is that you can't do it, and you shouldn't try. I tried to do it. I tried a lot of ways of trying to do it. I tried looking up how to do it. I tried a bunch of plugins. I'd made a bunch of buttons that kind of got me in that general direction, but every time I tried to look this up, all the results for the Razer Loop Deck specifically just gave me results for the Stream Deck. That's even when you're not looking for Stream Controller X. I was looking for Loop Deck, and I got Stream Deck. So that's something to keep in mind. So I tried a bunch of plugins, a bunch of buttons. I have a couple left here. These ones here are the official ones provided by the Razer Audio Mixer app. This one, I don't know what it does. This one, which says the same thing, opens a menu where I don't know what any of it does. When you try to install this stuff, by the way, it tells you to install the Synapse software, so I did that, and that did not help. This here is just volume controls for the speaker. That's straightforward. This here is the microphone menu we already had. The closest I got was this button right here, and when you press it, it mutes and it unmutes the microphone. But this button will not tell me the state of the microphone. A different version of the button that lets you control the volume of the microphone can be used to tell you whether or not it's muted. So hitting this button changes this button, which will then tell you whether or not it's muted. And when you hit reset in that button, that's what mutes and unmutes the microphone. So if you want to be able to mute and unmute the microphone from the home screen and to be able to see the status from the home screen, you need to set up two buttons to do that. Another issue is that while this button will tell you whether or not it thinks the microphone is muted or unmuted, when you go into the input list, it will disagree sometimes. So now you see this says mute, so it's unmuted. Over here it says unmuted. You come out here and this button still thinks the microphone is muted. So this button is not reading the state of the microphone from the system. If I mute and unmute over here, it's not changing over here. So basically, if you want a button that can do this, the Stream Deck is kind of your only option. There's no reason the Razer shouldn't be able to do that, but as far as I've been able to tell, it can't do that. Oh, also on the Razer, you have no control over these arrow buttons. They are where they are, whereas on the Elgato, you can move these buttons around or remove them or do whatever. So here's the deal. I think the Razer hardware is better than the Stream Deck. The buttons feel a little bit better, and they're a little bit easier to see, and its stand is a little bit grippier, which matters. I also like that I spent less money on the Razer hardware. But the thing is, the Stream Deck software is a lot better than the Loop Deck software, and the Stream Deck software isn't even that good. It should not have taken me an hour and a half to set up a mute button, but at least I could set up a mute button. So for me, this little mute button here is a really big deal breaker on the Razer because I want a little button that I can press to mute my microphone, and I want that button to tell me whether or not the microphone is muted because XLR microphones don't have that built in, and my interface doesn't have that built in. So this little mute button is kind of the only thing I want. But I know for most people, that's just a tiny little feature that the Razer kind of has you covered on. So to be fair, I'm going to use both of these extensively on my live stream. It's going to be easy. I do so many, and you people watch them, and I'm popular, and I have friends. So hang tight, and I'll be right back.